in person since I believe 2019, which is before I got involved with the organization. So excited to see people in person come out and learn about this super important topic. I would like to give a shout out to Kim Yo, our program volunteer coordinator for tirelessly work behind the we want to call up soon. Is that something new? Is that right? Okay, I'm working on it. Working this afternoon. Our executive director has been from helping Kim with this event as well as everything else that goes into running our organization. And I would also like to extend thanks to our panelists, Dan Hinton from the City of Issaquah, Barbara McPherson from City Forest Grants, as well as Kathy from the local parks for joining us today and for sharing their expertise. So yeah, and I guess, oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, and so I think, we're gonna probably spend the next hour or so talking about forest carbon and carbon credits. There's also, I have a list of questions that it'll be, very conversational with panelists, feel free to fill in what each other is saying. You don't need to get through all the questions necessarily, there's a lot. And audience members also are going to have some time reserved at the end for audience questions. So there's a couple questions that folks already asked. And there's index cards that Nicole has. If you have, yes, or during if you want to write down if you don't know or yeah. So I think with that we can get started. I guess I should probably also introduce myself. I'm Kelly Jane. I'm the vice president of the board of the Altos Club, as well as the vice president of Ashland. And apparently our go-to person to moderate things. And so yeah, I'm going to be asking questions and mostly just learning more about forest carbon credits along with you all. So I guess I'll hand it over to our panelists for them to introduce themselves. And provide, an overview of themselves, the organization, as well as, what their relationship is with the topic of forest carbon and carbon credits and municipal house.
Thank you. Good to see everyone. Lots of familiar faces here. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Dan Hitz. I'm the urban forest supervisor with the City of Issaquah. Within the Parks and Community Services Department. Pretty new to this role. This is a new role at the city, which is really exciting. So building out some existing programs like Green Issaquah, building on our urban tree canopy assessment, working on an urban forest management plan for the city. So expect to see some outreach solicitations on that here in the near future. But really, really cool that I get to work across about 1,500 acres of forested parkland within city limits. A lot of that is kind of day-to-day operational work that I've been able to work on few carbon credit projects before, both on the on the tree planting side, I should say. I'm very familiar, we'll talk about the bird acquisition and the conservation credits that we're developing that we've been out here the last couple of years. And a lot of you, I know from my past role with Mountain Summary My Trust, managing their restoration program, and sort of done a lot of work on Issaquah Creek and Mount San Antonio over here in this area. So very excited to be here. Maybe you learn a little bit more context to kind of be on the ground, how some of these projects work, how we develop these, how we monitor and maintain what are fairly long-term commitments for these tree planting projects. Yeah, very happy to share some of that knowledge here, both in Issaquah and some of my past role.
Thank you, Dan. Very nice to meet you all in Mark. I'm the founder and executive director of the organization that is based in Seattle, working nationally, and we are a carbon industry. So that's the first jargon word, unfortunately, that you're going to hear. It won't be the last, I'm sure. So just to explain this, and just kind of let you know what the industry is, there are different actors. Right? So there are registries, and registries tend to develop the rules that the projects have to follow in order to credits. So the registries develop the rules. They then essentially issue credits to projects who have followed the protocol and follow them. So we're like the credentialing body. You think of us as like LEED for buildings, and they're for LEED, or Energy Star for appliances. They're really credentialing bodies. And that's what we do. We don't do carbon projects. They're done by people. And technique, so they have to follow our rules. So again, I'm being a bit simplified, but they have to follow our rules and we issue credits. So we are the registry, and we're working only in urban and what is the jargon word in peri-urban, or the areas around it. So we are focused only on what we make urban forests. And we're doing that because part of the work which is in the wild has never really focused on urban areas. Parcels are smaller, urban volumes are smaller, so the big registries and profile urban is not really. It felt like this is a really important space because the urban and peri-urban trees are incredibly valuable, not just for carbon. In fact, some would say carbon is the least of the valuable trees. Values are in all the so-called ecosystem benefits, another jargon word, but that's stormwater, air quality, energy savings, and all the social impacts. Human health, access to nearby nature, and economic development.
Everyone, on behalf of the party role, I mean, Department of Natural Resources and Parks. In our forestry program, I manage our forest carbon program, launched in 2019. So the county has made a few efforts in trying to create carbon projects over the years, and for various reasons, they ended up not being viable. And with the forest credits, we created four carbon projects, tree preservation. But because so much of King County, incorporation, so much of the borough, a lot of our did. We created our bigger project, which is a much larger registry called FARA, and we verified carbon standards. The majority of our carbon projects is not PCS. But it's great to be part of this because of years and learning more free carbon and learn how to do it as regional government. It's fun, the county that we're not requiring. So looking at forested parcels that otherwise we use for commercial timber harvest, and partnership development. We buy those properties and put them in conservation management. So thinking about carbon credits for us is really looking at the difference between those two trajectories. One path that might have taken, there's a path that it takes after we buy it. Lots of complicated registries that go forward. We look at how much carbon is saved on that landscape. County Forest works on many other things. Even the forestry program, the forest carbon program is a piece of our work that small team learning about this fairly complicated world. And
definitely a modest, because I think King County was first county government in the United States to do a forest carbon program. And it's very good to have been.
Great. Yeah, I didn't know that. Since Kathleen's so modest, I think smart for, really being our hype man here for celebrating our independence. So I guess a bit of a, basic question, but, the topic of this, panel is forest carbon and carbon credits. So for those of us in the audience who might not be as familiar with the terms, could you provide a quick definition of what forest carbon is, how the carbon is in the forest, and then what a carbon credit is. And I don't know, Mark, if you want to take this question?
yeah. I think the easiest way to think about it is thinking about carbon, thinking about atmospheric pools and terrestrial landscapes. And really what we're trying to do is move it from one pool to another. So we know that in the atmosphere, we have higher concentrations of CO2 and other greenhouse gases than light. And that has all kinds of impacts on our climate. And what we're trying to do is think about how we can move more of that into these terrestrial pools. And so forests do that for us naturally. There's a lot of people out there looking at kind of technical solutions to climate change. I think that's going to be potential too, but we have trees that do this for us. And so through photosynthesis, they're taking in carbon dioxide, they are converting that into the trunk and roots and the leaves and branches, and all of that becomes stored carbon. So you're out there looking at the landscape and looking at those trees, about half of what you're seeing, that biomass, about half of that is carbon. So forest carbon, that's really what we're talking about, is that carbon that's held in trees. It's in this part of the world, typically held there for a very long time, and we have a lot of very long-lived species, and so that means that when we keep those forests and landscapes forested, we're keeping that carbon held in trees for hundreds and hundreds and sometimes thousands of years. And so it can be a really valuable piece of this solution. The big term is often used as natural climate solutions. So any of these kinds of actions that sequester and store carbon, taking it out of the atmosphere, keeping it in terrestrial ecosystems, conservation of the landscapes, restoration of the landscapes. Those are all kind of this broad set of solutions. We know that really no pathway towards keeping temperatures below 1.5 degrees, 1.5 degrees Celsius. They don't involve that. They all also involve lots of efforts to reduce emissions, that as well. But these natural climate solutions can be important.
So, one of the things that the scientists did early on when climate science was developing was to essentially quantify it. Because they're trying to figure out, well, what is the concentration in the atmosphere? Growing, declining, so they need to quantify that. And as part of that effort, there was this idea that's now some 30 years old of can we incentivize people to actually reduce emissions or remove carbon from the atmosphere? So if there's an incentive mechanism, you need some unit, basically. So carbon credit is now internationally accepted to be a metric ton of CO2. That's what it is. It's a standard unit the world over. You hear carbon credit, it's actually a metric ton of CO2. And it's that simple. That is now a unit that's measured now in an alternate way across all different sectors, hundreds of different carbon project types now, from industrial plants to methane reduction on dairy operations, to rice cultivation, destruction of fluorocarbons, natural climate solutions, blue carbon, which is carbon related to water. There's hundreds of projects now, but they're all down to trying to quantify it down to each metric. Just to be clear, too, carbon is one of the so-called greenhouse gases. So we read the paper, GHG is the abbreviation for greenhouse gases. It's one of the gases that goes up. It's now swaddling the earth like a blanket. And when you burn fossil fuels, you emit a lot of carbon. There are other greenhouse gases. Methane, for example, is actually quite a bit more per unit neutral with carbon. There's just a lot more carbon emitted.
I can kind of give the operational kind of viewpoint of this, or kind of on the ground, and just I think kind of hints already is generally tree planting projects and tree conservation projects that generate those credits. And I think really neat about Mark's organization, City Forest Credits, is they do both, and I think it really complements each other well, because the conservation projects, that's carbon that's already stored in these trees. We're talking about trees that is well here that some of that second forest might be 100 years old. Long living trees like those for after trees like black cottonwood that whole lot of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere much quicker. One, if you can start with your opinion on that question here, but I'm curious for the, kind of cutting for this tonight. It seems like there's potential credits out there for like forest practices too. So, I guess going back to the tree planting, that is, a little sort of more to ex-ante, right? Meaning it's kind of done before, done based on projections. So you're putting trees in the ground that really haven't stored any carbon yet, projecting that on 25 or longer year periods. But those are the two kind of primary approaches that we talk about, projects that we look at in Issaquah and on Greenway. It seems like there's kind of a field out there too for improved forest practices to increase the amount of carbon that your forests are storing. So that might be things like moving invasive species, to some extent that might be thinning forests to promote more long-term old growth in the county, I believe. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's kind of forest practice goals there too, and really trying to increase the longevity and kind of growth base of your trees too. So anything that you add on that?
Great, thanks everyone for that introduction to forest carbon and carbon credits. So Mark, you explained that a carbon credit is the unit for 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide. And so my understanding is that the way that these forest carbon and tree planting projects work, that there's a methodology where you have this amount of carbon in the trees, and someone else must be like, oh, I want to buy this carbon for this price, and then buy it to offset their organization's carbon footprint or what have you. So could you provide a bit more detail about for the city of Issaquah County, as well as the state forest credits, who are the folks kind of buying these carbon credits and what their motivations are for doing so? And then, once the money comes from the supplier to you, then what do you use that money for? Programs that city of Issaquah parks or county department parks.
So, again, we are the registry. So just a small point, and this is part of the technical aspect of the department. Because we are the credentialing body, we issue credits to projects. So we issue credits to King County, credits to the Mountains and the Greenway. We do not sell the credit. We don't get the revenue. That goes directly to the public. And that's designed to avoid conflict of interest where we're somehow, issuing credits to projects that we have safety. So there being incentive maybe at corners or issue back credits. So we remain independent from the market sale of the credits. So that's just the point. So I can give you my perspective on buyers, but again, we're not buying and selling the carbon. So what I hear is what I hear from project operators like King County and Dane. And of course, we do have buyers that contact us to say, hey, we've heard about the program, we're interested, where can we get credits? And then we refer them to projects like King County. So companies do this for a lot of different reasons. One of the really wonderful examples is Pointers. So they in 2011, I think, decided to go carbon neutral. And they put a whole program through to essentially make every division responsible for their carbon emissions. So every division, like Microsoft, had to essentially quantify their emissions, and they imposed a carbon tax. So if you didn't find a way to get your emissions down to zero, and almost no division could do that, your division was in essence subject to an internal tax on your profits. So that kind of work makes every division head responsible for emissions in their own community. They most recently decided that they were going to go back and remove all of their carbon in 1977, I think. So they're not just going carbon neutral on what they're doing now, they're going back to remove all carbon back to the first time they want to. Now, why do they do that? Multiple reasons. They want to be a leader, they want to be a corporate citizen, they have activist employees, I'm sure we're pushing them, they have activist shareholders that are pushing them. I think also maybe a self-interest. They want to get out in front of this because they may see some kind of regulation from it. They rather, yeah. So multiple reasons. know as well as I do, other buyers and
Yeah, I think it's, for us, one of the interesting things about the fires, we did forest credit, is that they have such a spread, it's like everything from a very tiny fly fishing company in West Seattle to, fairly large, or like more medium sized, but a small amount of credits. So a lot of variety, an architecture firm in Seattle. Love that one. So some of them are buying very small numbers of credits, and same thing, they want to make sure that their operation to be carbon neutral, they're calculating the emissions associated with their operation and for credits, and many of them are credits. For our larger project, the BCS project, our first buyer was Microsoft. They lost the whole first batch of credits from that project. And they were a great partner for that. And then since then, we started working just are such a small program, and it's hard. So we work with called Chama that specializes in these kind of natural conservation projects, especially forest burning. They actually do another level of review, which is good for us to help that kind of extra review of our project. And then they are able to match us with buyers who we meet their interests and ours, and how that doesn't enable us, I think, to become a little more sophisticated as a seller, and that was the first time we put together criteria with our buyers. We wanted to make sure the buyers were first working to reduce their emissions and have evidence that they will reduce their emissions. Many of them have science-based targets for their emission reductions, and then they'll buy carbon credits to offset those. The ones that are really hard to reduce, that's where they're. And yeah, for the most part, I think a whole range of buyers, I think largely motivated. They're all in this voluntary market, not doing it. Have to do it. It's part of the responsibility for us.
Great, so we talked a bit about, why people are buying carbon credits and the fact that, there's rules to make sure that these carbon credits are actually, legitimate and what they say they are. From an operational perspective, how do you actually go out and measure, if I'm like, the city is applying to spot this new property on the side of the mountain called Bird property, and they decide that they're gonna use the carbon revenues for that. How would you go about determining how much carbon is included in those trees that are on that land, and then who verifies it, and kind of what does that process ultimately?
Try to start this one and let Mark speak a little bit more to some of the more scientific quantification tools that City Forest Credits developed. And I know some of the work that you all done presentation is going out and taking some measurements at time too, really trying to kind of fine tune local models of what you're seeing on the ground. So the tree planting projects, I can say there's a lot of documentation, just kind of the paperwork side of it, whether that's photos, invoices, planting list, lots of different, obviously that big takeaway. The more you can document, the better, and that increases the credibility of these projects. For the tree planting projects, I can speak mainly my familiarity is with the City Forest Credits Protocol. You're looking at 25-year monitoring requirements. So year one, like I said, that's really documenting what went in the ground and making that as kind of clear as possible for the registry and for the third-party verifier who they review all the documents that are submitted to the registry. But then at intervals, you are receiving those credits throughout that 25 years. So there's kind of added layers of monitoring there. And some of it is simple as going out and confirming survival of trees, as a tree density. Similar, we expect to have some mortality, and that's factored into the protocols as well. So it's not like we're assuming 100% of these tree planting credit is survive. You're going out there and maybe taking measurements on what the species diversity is, what the tree density is, what the diameter of crest height, the diameter of standard height, what working off the ground is. And that's what we really inform and fine tune some of these models by understanding. So there is on the tree planting projects actually wiggle room, potentially earn a little bit more credits, or, there's some money set aside and there's a small reversal, but you're actually, on track for, let's say, in year 4 to add year 25. So actually just talking to one of my old colleagues, Anna Wheeler, about going out 6 or 7 years ago and measuring trees in his club for like 25 years to kind of see what a recreation site actually looks like. We have sites like that here, which is really cool. Along the picnic trail near the animal hospital where you wanted an entry point. These are accredited, of course, but we can kind of use the baseline to kind of see what conditions look like at the end of the 25-year period as we're planning for these credit projects. So yeah, my expertise is definitely the partnership planning side of the preservation. I see there's similar measurements that you're trying to kind of figure out based on the parcels that are being preserved, but I'll talk about the Captain Mark.
So our project, we don't do tree planting projects, so our projects are all these, we're trying to refine enforcement and complete enforcement. And it differs from, different methodologies. So within a registry, City Forest Credits has 2 protocols of methodology, that's tree planting and tree preservation. With the under verified carbon standard, there are dozens and dozens of local registries. So there are many, many different kinds of methodologies that fit different environments throughout the world. And so they're a little bit different. City Forest Credits, it's mostly kind of computer-based and less field-oriented. With verified carbon standard, because the county had access to LiDAR data, so local sense data that allowed you to kind of get a sense of the shape of the forest more or less, and using lasers to look at tree height. We were able to use that as part of our inventory and bring people money to be able to training model so that we I think I guess maybe it's a different question, or maybe it's the same question, but I think you had a question about how do you know that it's accurate, should I do that or yeah, I mean that was good. Yeah, and I think it's a really good one, and I think we have on the one end, the most accurate thing you could do would be to go out and inventory, you have plots everywhere, and what is on the forest. Okay, Christine, you super competing, that would take you a huge amount of time, a huge amount of money, and a huge amount of effort. And then on the other end, you have very little inventory and you might not be as accurate. And so you're kind of always, you're trying to find that place where you get as accurate as possible for these. All of these products, even. Right, so we do this work. We have consultants hired or something for, but then there's an outside company. And I think that is such a critical piece of these projects that somebody from and those they will go out to see those things. Usually going to choose some of those spots. And they really want to see that they're not whatever variation you have should be the same across all of them. So that really is how we kind of assure ourselves and do advisors.
Thank you. And Mark, do you have any other comments about, the accuracy and the methodology for measuring forest carbon? And is the methodology just, measuring the amount of carbon that's stored in the trees? And is it, typically like a conservative estimate or, all that?
Yeah, so from the registry point of view, we want to be conservative in our credit. So the big evil we want to avoid is over credit. And so just on the preservation projects that Kathleen was talking about, in our particular methodology, we're dealing with smaller parcels. We essentially allow projects 2 different methods. One is the on-site quantification, where you have people on the ground sampling trees, measuring. And then the second method is there are lookup tables that have been compiled by the U.S. Forest Service based on thousands of plot samples all over. So if a project completes a forest composition report that shows that the carbon stock is pretty uniform, they can use the tables. We make them take a 20% deduction right off the top from using the tables to account for the fact that these are tables and they're not actually on-site convocation. So we try to be very conservative. Again, our parcels are much smaller than definitely in the big registries. I think often the big registry rule of thumb is the minimum project size like 5,000. You may have a little bit smaller than that. But a lot of them like really big parcels. Whereas ours range from 10 to 200.
That's actually a good point, even where you're doing.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I guess one other question that, I had is, earlier you talked about how for some, especially with these urban carbon credit programs, and for any kind of free, preservation or tree planting program, there's so many benefits to the project beyond just the carbon that's stored in all the ecosystem services, habitat preservation, et cetera, that are part of, a larger, management plan. So, could you speak a bit more to how the carbon credits, play into that whole broader land management system, and then how you actually go out and select the plots that you're going to be using for this part of the project?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting topic because again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I think most urban forest people say carbon is not even the largest benefit of trees. And because the logs are smaller in forestry, I knew at the beginning that we need to really create, in effect, if you think about it, we're kind of creating a new product. We're a nonprofit organization, so I don't mean that in a crass way or a vulgar way. I just mean that the carbon market is out there, but no one has done forest carbon. So this is a new type of credit. And we wanted to really highlight the unique attributes of this credit. One of those is there's a lot of science on ecosystem benefits of urban trees. Because these are trees where people are, and they do reduce stormwater. They do provide energy savings. They do cool cities in hot weather. They improve air quality, and there's quite a lot of science on that. So we can quantify that and in fact bundle those in with the metric ton of CO2. Remember I said carbon credit is in metric ton of CO2, so that has to be quantified. But we can quantify the ecosystem values too, down to the resource unit. So with stormwater, it's cubic meters of stormwater. And then there's data on what it costs cities to treat or manage their stormwater. So we can quantify the dollar savings for trees as well. So from our point of view, that's really wonderful because we don't have a credit that's just what we call actually a carbon plus credit. It's not just the atmospheric benefit. And of course, that's what the distinguishing factor is with urban forestry, is where the people are. In fact, so just last week, there was a big world forum on urban forestry. We presented a paper there where we're developing methodology to try to, in essence, count the number of human lives affected. Because again, with a lot of the big rural forest gardens, they're talking about thousands and billions of trees. Well, our tree numbers are not as high, but our human numbers are much higher. So let's count the humans. So yeah, so that's all very important. And the social impacts are really important. I just want to check in with everybody. Again, we can get really technical, we can nerd out on this all night. So I somehow want to empower you to don't be polite. If you're nodding off or if you have questions, we want to be relevant to what you're interested in.
There and market. Think about the stock market is set by active intermediaries that people, supply and demand, trade prices, lower prices. But how does that work?
Great question, because voluntary market, compliance markets, California compliance market, now has compliance market for fossil out there yet. there's much more kind of control on the price, whereas in the voluntary market, it's just wide open. It's really huge between the seller of the credits and the buyer of the credits. And so for us to set a price for our credits, we try to look at there's market data, there's market vision focus, market has really great job compiling information on all the projects out there and all the credits sold, all the pricing projects that come around regions of the world, the price of it. So you get a pretty good sense of what the price of the price is out there. Great distribution of all the market. And then it can go up to $30, $40, $50 per credit. They tend to be, you know, a lot of the differences are geographic and project quality. So if you can demonstrate a high quality project, you can pricing those no benefits, a lot of buyers would be interested in that, and they're probably going to pay more if they can demonstrate that it has those benefits, say it's one buyer. And then a lot of our buyers are interested in projects that are local and are not that many people. You know, they like, you know, I think having employees go out to some of these sites and do on-tour projects and things like that. So there is a lot of interest in local projects. That's true in the compliance market as well. That's more required there. That those compliance markets are typically requiring a certain number of credits to have environmental benefits. And I think voluntary market is very heavy with that. Yeah, it's a bit of a wild mess.
It's in a way, it's not hard to call it market, because you think of a market as like a stock exchange, where you can go see the prices. There's no place to see the prices. So you depend on these reports that compile, and that's more aggregated information. You can't really look to see what specific prices are paid for the project.
Question about forest practices. Can that influence, let's say, when you want to clear cut the area or being more selective and leaving more trees behind or reseeding, affecting the soil? And secondly, how do you account for forest fire? In my opinion, negative credits in the second, third, fifth degree.
Yeah, there's forest carbon projects are essentially in three categories. There's afforestation, reforestation, specific treatment projects. There's avoided conversions, those are preservation projects, property diversity, and food forest management. And that they call it IFM. So IFM is kind of a broad category, a lot of different things related to forest practices. Most often they are extending rotations. So where a typical commercial rotation might happen in 40 years, they extend that out to 60 or even 80. The big issue with those that Mark was referring to earlier, the traditional carbon projects require a lot of acreage to make them viable. A lot of project costs associated with developing the project and then continuing to monitor the project over time. And so you basically can't clear that. That's why a lot of this out there, many of them, at least in Washington, there's a few that are some water between the countries that have done this. They've taken very little of their own and accept those. But it's hard to do in small acres. And then some of them, it sort of depends what the practice is. One of the practices the county is doing, or we do is harvesting alder, harvesting million county loans and managements, and then replanting the certain monitors, which we know over the long term has a good carbon benefit. But when you model that out, 30 years before you made up the carbon you lost, people took it out, and then really started generating credits. So it doesn't, it's not very viable as a project. to know scope of action to do it. Oh, yeah, fire. So all of these different registries and methodologies require that a certain number of credits for projects going properly. So for each project, and I'm telling you a little more about this, yes, but I think the same, yeah, and, here's a, yeah. So there's either a set percentage or in some of the other projects, there's different measures of risk that they look at, and we fill out a lot of information about what kinds of risks exist, and then based on that risk rating, a certain percentage of our credits are assigned to these pools. And so in the larger registry, like yes, there are projects from all over the world putting credits into this project. So if any of those projects around the world have a catastrophic event, carbon pull from those. So it's a way, it's kind of insurance pool and way of guaranteeing that no matter what, or
So, I will also say I do have some questions, from the note card, so I might ask them those before going back on the question. Yeah.
Well, so what, the question the gentleman asked really is called a reversal. It's a negative in the book. They're called reversals because we've got carbon in the trees that has received credits, and that carbon is gone up in smoke. So that is a serious problem. And you may have read some news reports about forest fires in California where tens of thousands of acres that were credited burned, and there were reversals. And I think climate action reserve issued the credits on those. And I think there was some concern that they were going to go through their insurance pool of credits just on some of those big, huge fires in California. So it's an important issue, and you want to make sure that there's a person that's covered. This insurance pool does that, and I would say on the urban our projects, number one, they're much smaller, so the catastrophic losses are not as big. And number two, they're very geographically distributed. So we're not going to get 100,000 credits burning up in California. And plus, in urban areas, there tend not to be a lot of credits. So some of those risks, again, just in our particular corner of the world, they're not so huge.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that. So, I'm gonna ask some of these questions that I have here and then, go back to some of the audience questions. So, first question here is, do carbon credits pay for planting street trees in neighborhoods that don't have trees? And how big is 1 metric ton of carbon? Like, how can you visualize that? Which is related to this other question is, from Representative Bill Ramos, who's asking, what's the approximate size, diameter and height of Douglas fir that will create 1 carbon credit over 1 time? I know those are 3 questions.
At least, and I have a few stats I've used, maybe not on or how long to get the credit for the per tree. I think broadly the revenue generated from credits, depends on kind of the goals of your program. That's really nice. I can say when I was at the Greenway Trust, the project we worked on was in City of Shoreline, as Mark mentioned, kind of smaller project, it was 3 acres, like about 2,000 trees. And that's a pipe that we were able to, a lot of the work we've done historically in that organization here at what do has been funded by sand recovery efforts, and then there's a lot of co-benefits that go with that in our primary areas. That was a site that didn't have that connection necessarily, so these credits were a great way to generate look more creatively in a really cool kind of neighborhood community area. So getting into both ecosystem services we talked about, whether that's air quality, the site will be here K5, water quality, has small drainage coming through there, but some of the social benefits too of having neighbors who can actually connect with the green space that was literally just overrun by 200 acres of blackberry and accessibility land. There's lacking for that stuff, but so that's a site that was just amazing where we could actually generate revenue for some of the project implementation that go a little greater there, but the long-term maintenance. I'd say that's the probably most difficult thing to fund on our tree planting restoration sites, is how do we maintain these paths, maybe a 3-4 year grant funded window we have. So for me, that was one of the really amazing things that comes out of that model. I think that could be really neat. That theoretically could go to trees. For that project, we decided to dedicate that specifically to continued maintenance of that site long term. See if it's well, the Burton acquisition, I'm looking at Jeff back in the corner there, but I think that's all comes to the cost. I mean, that was a very expensive acquisition with that in our system. So there's a lot of different things, but theoretically, yes, that's something we could kind of agency organization. Kind of varies, but definitely a creative way to produce revenue for long-term things. Put them in the ground. Bring them on to that.
I can say that, and yes, you can plant street trees in our program. So there are a number of projects, street trees. Providence, Rhode Island has an equity project, so the trees are all planted in numbers neighborhoods. Des Moines, Iowa has multiple years now street tree plants. Minneapolis is credited to plant 20,000. So, bigger projects, but these are all street trees on public property, delivering public benefits. An open growing urban forest tree, open growing urban tree, 26 years will store anywhere from 1 to at most 4 or 5 metric tons. And the variability does depend on climate zones. So, rule of thumb, bigger trees than just formal apartments. Certain climate zones tend to grow really good trees, like trees and grow really well. The Northeast, for example, 26 years, the carbon numbers are really low because trees tend to be slow growing, but very dense. So they put on a lot of carbon after year 12. And it's kind of the trees are kind of packing in the growth. I wish I could quantify the size. I wish we could put a thing up here to show you what a metric ton of CO2 is. It reminded me I need to get out of my little technical world and think like a real person on this thing. Because that would be a very vivid, it'd be very vivid to show them.
I don't have the answer to that one either. I do somewhat regular field trips with Squad Trails Club and take people out to the forest where I can tell you these particular forests and about how much per acre. And, and kind of compare that to what a very young forest would be versus an old growth forest and kind of get a sense of that way when I'm the tree level. So,
What is it per acre?
well, the site that we often go to, which is right, it's part of Burton, I would sort of cut for that that's around 500 tons of CO2 per acre. And then if you take that doesn't mean you have 500 credits from that site. It's all deduction. Also, because on any particular acre, not all of it is credited. So when you're crediting is carbon that wouldn't have been there otherwise. So we have lots of movement about buffers along streams and rivers and other places where those trees couldn't have been cut anyway. So we don't get credit for keeping those trees there. So any given acre is different from the next acre, depending if it has buffers, if it has steep slopes that are not harvestable, or it has things that mean that less than that 4 acres is creditable. And then when you get to your total creditable amount of that acre, you still have all these deductions. So you're deducting for the uncertainty of your model, or how much carbon is actually on the acre. You're deducting for buffer, you're deducting for another term of leakage, which is saying, if I don't harvest here, how likely is it that harvest is going to move down this road because we didn't harvest here and harvest here? So it's, I think, defined as greenhouse gas emissions that are outside the project area that are due to the project. So you make deductions for that as well. So by the time you get all the deductions, you're not getting that.
Time frame on that? You said 500 credits per acre per year?
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
But it depends on the age of course.
Yeah, and I can speak for the kind of our local example of original property, and I don't know if I was 100% correct, but I think it was, and sorry, Jeff, looking in the back corner there, I think it was about a 33-acre acquisition, the whole parcel in total, and I think it was just about half of that was actually drivable for the reasons Kathleen was explaining, so that's how that project went. Kind of a staff that has helped me try to think about, kind of, and I can't speak to the 1 ton thing, but, kind of on age, kind of bring the trees. 100-year-old Douglas fir tree, so that would be some of our older second-growth trees after kind of the initial logging here in the early 20th century. 100-year-old Douglas fir tree, if you can estimate about 14 metric tons of carbon, it could get a little promising. So, Mark was saying 1 to 4.5 in 5-year period, that's times 4, obviously not linear growth necessarily we're talking about there. That's a good rule of thumb, and then, once again, we're at 14 metric tons of carbon dioxide. That's equivalent to about an average American's carbon footprint on an annual basis. That's a little bit lower in Washington. That's the national average too. So you can think about one tree at 100 years. Douglas fir that might vary a little bit. You're probably talking about trees approaching 3 feet diameter at that point. Hopefully that gets a little bit better. 13 or 16 acres.
And standing in that, and then the amount per year varies depending on.
Yeah, so for clarity, that figure doesn't change, that'd be that amount per year, that tree, that it will grow and so might increase a little bit more, but it's got then basically that much.
Yeah, and that's a big difference between the tree planting projects and the tree preservation project. Planting projects, like Jen was saying, starting at 0 and projecting out what that would be. The preservation projects are saying how much carbon you can keep here that you otherwise would have lost. So that's your initial batch of credits is larger, and then you're getting credits for the amount that it grows over time. And so that's a small amount of credits you get on an ongoing basis over time.
And the follow-up was, you're saying 100-year Douglas fir was equivalent to a family year or
Individual. But now, family car about 5, so you can understand that was big.
Is it only for three?
It depends a little bit on the methodology, what exactly is included. And ours, we use scanning trees, it doesn't include shrubs. It does include some of the down trees as well, so we also include those in our model. We don't include soil carbon in our water discuss project. So
we do get the soil we need to discuss.
okay, yeah, so methodology by methodology, there's some differences.
And one point that I will add is, as Mark and Kathy have alluded to earlier, we try to get, conservative estimates of the amount of carbon that's in the project. So, just counting live trees, that's pretty conservative. We're pretty sure that that carbon plus what can be preserved, where the soil we just don't yet have. It does take a lot more effort to, there's low carbon ways of doing it, but it's a lot more complicated and, much bigger uncertainty bars. So one other question we have here is about the use of technology to help with the verification and quantification of carbon in these carbon credit projects. So we use drones, satellite, and etc. measurement of carbon credits, and then can we also use AI to assist?
Yes, and there's a lot of interest in trying to better understand how to do that, because it would bring down the cost of doing these projects a lot, if more than done with about the sense data. I believe Microsoft has funded some people to work on AI, or working on AI and trying to figure that out. some of the bigger registries are trying to figure out how to use that in their process of verifying credits. Because once we go to the auditor, then all of that reporting goes back to the registry itself, and they have to do that's trying to figure out how to do some of those schools is, it's a big area of interest, big area of research, and not an expert on any of it, but for us, even just having that light on data is a pretty big step, so, but LiDAR is very expensive. So kind of figuring out what tools, individual budget can go on and how we use them.
I can probably get an email every 2 weeks from a company, a climate tech company that is doing something that is, wants to sell their services to us, with, planes of quite high resolution. And we have occasionally been and given them some areas to present an image, and so far, their results have just been pretty variable. So we've not used any of them. They also want to charge them. So it hasn't, I mean, from my perspective, it hasn't borne fruit yet in the way we want.
Great question. Oh yeah, Garrett does work for. So we developed something that actually wears backpacks, so we're part of the person to go around to a lot, but it's got the LiDAR sensor and 360-degree camera on it. So basically, the person they give it walk around the lot and get good coverage of the plot, get good visibility of all the trees around that plot. And then working on models in different areas and trying to prove the accuracy of the data, but working to the point where basically all the deviation or kind of the tree is slightly by the robot to make eyes get that faster and definitely there's I can be working on it and there's best applications for it at it. And coming up with the data,
I think there's a real need for that. I mean, it'd be wonderful if that would.
yeah, and it would be cool, like, oh, anyone can go out, you're like, on your children, on Creek Mountain, and you guys little backpack. And I mean, that Bruce probably close to, where we live, so we just go out there with a little room backpack. Work degree about the data, that would be a lot more data too. And the carbon credit is also just, anyone who wants to know that. Good plug. Okay, so I do have a couple more questions here, and I think might have time for a couple more after this last one. So if you have one, now's the time, right? Over them. Well, I have one more, then we can take your question. Okay, great. So these questions are more about kind of some of the management and ongoing monitoring of these projects. So one of them is if there's an reforestation or afforestation project where you plant trees, or is there drought season watering of planted areas to help with the season survival in July, August, and September? And then is there any management with regard to invasive control of the planted areas, blackberry, ivy, hawthorn, holly, etc., often they're planted by birds in clear areas?
And address the first part of that. Irrigation, absolutely, where we can, where it's feasible. A lot of sites where you're planting that just may not be the case, and there's a big cost associated with that too. So I think it's kind of a both. And the answer here in terms of, yes, that is part of it. Yes, something we're considering more and more, the kind of longer droughts we have, it's, partly the summer months, it's also the kind of hotter temperatures we're seeing. spring months too, that really kind of, cause or exacerbate that issue, but a lot of sites that's just not feasible, that's financially or just literally getting water out of sites where you're doing tree planting projects. So really, I'd say a big thing that our field was looking at is, kind of this broader climate adaptation. You'll hear kind of the controversial topics around species migration, actually moving species out there, native range further south, where we might anticipate a similar climate in the next several decades. That's certainly a more aggressive and controversial approach at this point. There's genetic migration, where you're looking at species like those further range from Canada to mountains in Mexico, and they're considered kind of specialist species where their genetics actually adapt quite a bit to their local environment and climate. So there's options where we can still possibly retain native species, but look at seed sources that are more resilient to what we're kind of forecasting our climates to be. That's tricky because that's a really big moving target in terms of current conditions. Annual we forecast in 2050 or 2080 is turning into what we think trees with lots of carbon. So it's tricky, but that's something we're looking at quite a bit. And ultimately, I'd say a big part of it is tree and species diversity. Some of these areas we kind of created those fir farms, and that's a great tree. It's a great garden tree. It's great for tree products, but we're looking at both species diversity, age diversity in our forests here. So there's a lot that's going into that that we are thinking about a lot. There's a lot of regionally, King County has a great network actually started for a lot of kind of municipal foresters like myself, really trying to bounce these ideas off each other and looking at starting to see allows for kind of some issues. So we'll kind of say that's part of the way is kind of how do we figure out better kind of drought tolerance and climate adaptation with our tree plantings to not rely primarily on irrigation, big scale. Trees. Yes. Yeah, so that kind of gets back to the forest practices and all that I just learned the IFM terms. So it was a good for me to learn. I was trying to explain that not super well as part of this, but yeah, so obviously that's a beautiful big part of it is, how do we look at the threats in our forests? My background, that's very much talking about invasive plant species as well. I'm talking about pathogen diseases as well. So yeah, there's huge, we use a very non-technical term, purchase food for our birds and eat, holly and English ivy berries, take it to a new tree, drop the, species of that spot, and all of a sudden you see a holly tree going, so. The earlier we can, attack and remove those trees, and basically it's huge, but, that's a big lift too, and it's something that, here in Isabel, we rely hugely on volunteers. Calling you out again, and pulling and moving out quite a bit of the site, kind of the basic kind of knowledge, trying to limit those impacts and protect both existing, nice, mature second growth trees we have, and allow us to plant new trees there too. So I'd say definitely part of the equation. It's a big lift, especially if you're talking about, the city has 400 or 500 acres on entire non-nutrition plateau, but there's so much more the state has, a lot less of the large regional forest that King County has. So it's a big lift and trying to figure out how we minimize those impacts. It's challenging and takes a lot of effort. So, yes, and prevent from the spread, and that's the kind of control, and also the areas where you can kind of fill in that story helps too. The spread is.
I guess that you have a question, and then. Yeah. So let's do the last.
Yeah, I had questions more to, earlier there was a matter about supply and demand. So I'm wondering on generally you look at the quantities carbon credits go to market, do you get a sense this is like sufficient to make a then climate change long term? Do you think that there is more national policy or like other shifts in demand that you want to achieve that, or one example they might talk doing on a voluntary basis? Is there something more we should demand or?
Hi.
So I guess I would address it by saying there are arguments for offsetting. But what we're talking about here is the voluntary carbon market offset system. And I think most people in the carbon world believe that for the world to decarbonize, we should have a vital, high quality offsetting system. Because we need to bring the private sector in. And so far, at least, the governments have a hard time regulating carbon work. And that's understandable because there's like $100 trillion of coal, gas, and oil in the ground. And the people that own that are not going to give it up. So they want to. And that means that they're powerful and they have a lot of influence in governments. So that's why it's very difficult for governments to regulate carbon. So to decarbonize, I think the feeling is we need to have the private sector. There have been problems with offsetting, which you're probably have all read about, which is there have been some bad projects, and some bad article in the New Yorker. I don't know if you read that just last week. It was kind of a dissection of kind of a bad actor, the gentleman I met actually spoke to before the pandemic. And that's terrible. I hate reading stuff because that paints the whole endeavor. And I don't like that because I do feel like we are in a crisis and you use every tool in the toolbox. Crisis. So offsetting to me is a really valuable tool. So I'm a pretty strong defender of offsetting. I'm obviously not a defender of bad quality projects, but it's like democracy. Democracy is bad actors and bad processes and it's ugly and messy, but we don't just throw it out. So sometimes perfect is going to be good. You also want to avoid some of the bad quality offsetting. You don't want companies to just offset and not make any efforts to reduce their emissions. That's the greenwashing problem, right? Where they're not even doing a sort of mitigation hierarchy. They're not really trying to mitigate their emissions first and then offset everything they can. They're just jumping into buying offsets. And that looks like a beautiful route kind of greenwashing. So I think that's being addressed in our product. This next space targets initiative, they come out very strongly to try to put. There's a lot of efforts under we have increasing integrity credits with endorsement agencies. One in Geneva and a new integrity council. Integrity efforts. So that's just my own personal view. But you're gonna have bad projects, and that's just unfortunate. But I think we need every tool. So that's my hope. So that is one government regulation that's happened. It happened in California. Linked with that. It's in California they call it patent trade. Here in Washington, it's patent invest. That's right. That's right. So patent invest. I mean, yes, that's a meaningful action, and that has within it an offset component. So under patent invest, the state has capped emissions on the whole fossil fuel. I mean, I'm being a little simplifying, but they capped emissions. Those regulated entities now can either clean up their facilities, or they can buy allowances that are auctioned off by the state, or they can offset up to a certain percentage of their emissions with recognized offset projects. The offset part hasn't been put in place, but the state is already selling millions of dollars. These are allowances that do allow them to meet their emissions. But that's the horse trade that you have to trade. Capping emissions, reducing them over time, and then issuing allowances that allow them to, in essence, emit. But it also means they don't have the dislocation of also being told, you've got to cut your emissions by a quarter, which would then hurt the physical economy. I think appears probably a key shot. So capital invest, clean energy bill, those are all really important things, really important.
I would also add that I think there's like different types of emissions, you know, we can't get to fully decarbonize economy just by planting trees. You know, we learned earlier, one person's emissions per year, 1 diameter drivers per, that's just multiply that even by like the number of people in the room, a lot, and think about everyone else, you know, in the world, and so we're gonna have to reduce emissions from, you know, everything else that we're doing. However, I think, you know, there's some various white papers out there about how companies should think about how they're offsetting their emissions. And so from things that are related to land use change, like if you're some kind of like agriculture company where you're, you know, the direct result is that there's deforestation related to clearing land for, you know, growing crops, then, you know, some other land use related offset could be the most appropriate thing. But in most cases, it's like, oh, you are, you know, using electricity, and you try to clear electricity or what have you, so. Definitely, but that said, you know, for, carbon offsets have, especially urban carbon offsets, have so many other co-benefits, like stormwater management, habitat conservation, et cetera, and some great revenue streams to, you know, help preserve those things, so we should be doing it regardless. And if the reason why people are investing in it is because of the carbon credit, you know, that's one motivation, but we should be doing it. So, I know you had one. Oh, anybody else have a question?
Okay, well, I'm curious in this one, like, what benefit of this small energy process for or are you doing sure that they have the
So in the voluntary market, there is nobody telling those companies who needs to invest. So I think it's, for me, and when I think about it, it's kind of helpful to think about it is, there's the policy context, and policy-wise, this country has never really set to the folks. And so California started cap and trade, Washington has cap and invest, which applies only to the market. Which even by, I think it's only about 100 that fall under cap and invest in Washington, but it makes up a large portion of greenhouse gas emissions in the state. All these other entities, even Microsoft, wouldn't fall under that. And so if from a policy side, we're not able to get to a place where say you actually have to lower your emissions, then we are in this voluntary space. And so like I said, for us, in our first batch of credits, we were still learning mass fires, just that is actually using for do that, but we do that now. We ask them to show us documentation. Some of them have space targets, initiative, they have here they got their targets, so if they're here and they're trying to get here, they can document 5. That's their target. There are other kind of documents that different companies have, so they're listed to provide to us to demonstrate that we're actually working on these. And the interesting thing about voluntary market is some of this argument that people are they're just doing it so that people are not going to reduce buying credits. You know, big organizations, marketplace did a big survey of all these buyers. But the interesting thing is that those companies that were buying credits, the voluntary carbon market, were far more likely to have public about what their emissions are. It's far more likely to have they were far more likely to have more ambitious targets. So they actually are listed to actively really are trying to do more.
For another was the expert once they have, the young forest, you have more kind of update, and open to, once you get to the field forest, it's my understanding that he had pretty much an equilibrium between the growth and photosynthesis, and then what and what and all that kind of atmosphere. So once you get on the big forest and you have that equilibrium, you don't have that update happening anymore. So, that makes sense, at least to do some selective logging in those forests and preserve those trees from decay, like turning them into building materials like you see here. Hopefully it's building less than 200 years, and so that carbon from all the wood beams stays here and does not come back into CO2. So to have that forest management practice that is focused on preserving the tree biomass material the second part was talked about it earlier on, like the beginning, reservoir, the biosphere, the ocean, the atmosphere, and the fossil fuels in the ground, and it's all about residence science of the carbon inwards and flight within the field. Biosphere always has a limited carrying capacity and when it's saturated, and then you have just as much decay as you have photosynthesis. So there has to be a limit on the tree growth can do when we get from the biosphere within. We just take too much out of the fossil fuel, the third reservoir and come into the atmosphere. Some of it can go to the biosphere and most of it can the ocean. Here's the solution. Found. And everything else is kind of, it can help, but it's not a solution to the problem with how much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see, where do I start? Maybe started, and so, yes, absolutely, the real solution is to move towards a net zero economy. We don't have an economy. Really, I see a lot of crediting as a bridge. You have to continue reducing emissions. We also know that some percentage of that we compensate for climate solutions. And that can help us get typically the length of permanence of insurance markets. How permanent is that? The kind of benchmark for compliance projects is 100 years, which, you know, in geological terms is not very long, but in 100 years, we hope that our economy is transforming a lot from what it is now. So, and in particular, these next 10 years are extremely critical. And so everything, you know, we do everything we can, certainly over these next 10, 20, 30 years, use all the tools. And I don't think that means it's so I think that's the second question. The first question was more about when you're forced to have it takes a pretty long time. It's a lot of long retreat continuing to sequester. We have a lot of decades. So even when it plateaus, you are still storing all of that carbon that is sequestered and stored in that forest. And so it's being held there. That is an important store. That doesn't mean you can't trees out. And we do that on our sites for even videos. But when we buy these from parks inventory, they are treated like any other any other part of the property ours, which is to say, we prioritize forests. Then we're often for portion of the so we're trying to manage towards that future environment. So if we have a property we bought that is going to be rented for and it's very dense, we will create forest. You have that awesome part, and you have to take out project. So there are different management strategies for different forests have different purposes. I think timber is a very important piece of the puzzle. It is a climate friendly building material, so it can be there to not be steel and that's a really important piece. Benefits. Fishing, salmon habitat, so it really depends what's us.
Yeah, how about we kind of like wrap up the main form and then important your great, yeah. Great question, Yuli, and thanks, Kathleen, for the super thorough answer. I guess before handing it over to the report, I guess one of the very interesting things with this form is that we were very intentional about calling this the carbon credits and forest carbon form, not climate change form, because even though it does have an impact on climate change, there's just so much more that goes into, mitigating climate change that we can't get to when the topic is more, focused on this. And I do not want to give the illusion that, this is the one end all be all climate solution. I mean, I think everyone in the audience is kind of in agreement on that. And I mean, in my day job, I work on renewable energy and buildings, are the biggest areas of, mitigating carbon. Yeah, I'll definitely hand it to Court after this, but I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, especially some of our land manager partners like Ben from DNR, as well as Jeff Waltley, City Municipal Parks Director, and Bill Ramos, who's our state representative for the business food. Yeah, again, thanks to the panelists for providing your expertise on this topic. I definitely learned a lot, and thanks for the audience for being super engaged and asking lots of good questions. Definitely. And I don't know, Corey, you want to give a talk? Okay. Yeah, I can hand you them.
And leave if you want.
I do a lot of talking to people about climate change, and I get a sense that there are a lot of smart people in the room, but a lot of people that I talk to are smart, and yet they get somewhat confused about the role that trees play in the climate problem and solution. And some of them get the impression that that's maybe all we need to do. And as you just suggested, there's a lot more to it. So I just wanted to put a little frame around what we need to be doing besides this important work with forests and forests. There are a lot more tools in the data box for climate change. And individually, there are 5 things that I like to talk to people about. I'm not going to give a long lecture, I'm just going to take the 5 things I'm done. First one is what are you eating, and food plays a really big role, and the type of food that you eat has a really, really big impact. learn more, you can eat. Number two is what we're doing in transporting ourselves around, everyone knows this. What are you doing about it? Because sensitivity is part of two. Number three is the kind of, power habits we have for heating space and heating water. In our cities in particular, are really, really big part of the puzzle. Without that, you can form a doorway at the end. Another one is, what are we doing about, talking to other people and reaching out to governments to hasten or hurry the transition? There's a lot that we can do there. And I've forgotten the fifth one because I don't have my list in front of me, but you get the impression. Is that why? So, thanks for listening. There's a lot to be thinking about. And we have opportunities in different ones to discuss that one. Thanks for tolerating me. Finishing out there. Thank you.
So we still have a lot more food for these, stuff on the pocket for